defendant took her daughter up the trail, but she didn't bring her back down. Members of the jury, you're here today because on July 14, 2018, a 12-year-old girl died due to the choices and actions of her mother. Today's trial is about not only understanding the death of Parker Page, but giving her the justice that she deserves. Our story begins when Parker is just 5 years old. She's diagnosed with asthma. Asthma causes periods of wheezing, shortness of breath, and severe coughing. By the time Parker is 6, her mother is in the prison system. Now, by the time the defendant is released from prison, Parker is 12 years old. And she's not the same girl that the defendant once knew. Parker, who was once happy and active, became too afraid to go outside, too afraid to leave the house. But despite her daughter's asthma and despite her daughter's fears, Miss Ryder still chooses to take her daughter to Calkins Campground. The campground is known for its high elevation and extreme trails. When Miss Ryder arrives at Calkins Campground, she chooses to take her daughter on the Chrome Loop Trail. Now, throughout today's trial, you'll get to not only hear, but see just how dangerous the Chrome Loop Trail is. The trail is filled with overgrown roots and crumbling rock. There are parts along the trail that are so narrow that only one person can hike at a time. There are parts along the trail that require you to hike alongside exposed cliffs. The evidence will show that at the beginning of the trail, there's a warning sign that highlights these dangers. The defendant knows that the trail is difficult, but still chooses to take her daughter on it anyway. And as Parker is walking up the trail, she begins to grow tired. The heat of the day and the elevation of the mountain get to her. She has trouble breathing due to her asthma. She tells the defendant she's tired and that she wants to stop. But the defendant makes her keep going. You'll hear from multiple eyewitnesses there that day that Parker was struggling as she was on the trail. She was limping and using her hiking staff. Again, she tells the defendant that she wants to turn around and head back to the campsite. But the defendant doesn't let her. She makes her daughter keep walking. Now, when the defendant and her daughter approach the top of the overlook, they approach the land bridge that leads to Calkins Rock. You'll hear that they were arguing at the top, at the edge of the overlook for over an hour. You'll hear from Mr. Lee, Mr. Dew, a hiker on the trail, who hears Parker scream from the overlook at 4:40. And after the scream, there's silence. And no one hears from Parker Page again. The defendant chose to take her daughter up the trail, but she didn't bring her back down. The evidence will show that Parker Page died between 4 and 6 p.m. on July 14, 2018. You'll hear from another hiker that day, Miss Lee, that the defendant was walking down the trail at 6:15 after her daughter had already died. You hear that hours after the defendant can't find her missing daughter, instead of calling the police or asking anyone at the campground for help that day, she chooses to make a practical decision and raise her daughter's life insurance to the maximum amount, hours after her daughter is missing. On July 14th, Jordan Ryder made all of the choices for her daughter, but Parker Page paid the price. Because of the choices and the actions of the defendant, the state is bringing a charge of involuntary manslaughter against her. Here in Midlands, you're guilty of involuntary manslaughter if you knowingly create a substantial risk to someone and cause their death. Now, today's trial is not a murder trial. We're not going to stand up here and try to convince you that Miss Ryder murdered her daughter, or that Miss Ryder didn't love her daughter. You can think of today's trial as somebody who is convicted of causing the death of another while texting and driving. Because that person made the choice to text while driving, they weren't paying attention to the road, crashed into another car, and they killed someone. Their choices and actions, while not purposeful or malicious, still caused the death of another. The choices and actions of the defendant created a substantial risk to Parker Page and caused her death. As a state, we have to meet this burden today beyond a reasonable doubt. We are confident that at the end of trial, after all the evidence is presented, that you will go back in that deliberation room and find the only just verdict for Parker Page. You will find Miss Ryder guilty of involuntary manslaughter, because on July 14, 2018, Miss Ryder made the choice to take her daughter up the trail, but she never brought her back down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.